Tonight, comedian Adam Conover and I talk sexism, Gamergate, and feminism. Is there a gender bias in the gaming industry, and why does it matter? I'm Lauren Southern, and you're watching Standoff. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of Standoff. I'm sure a lot of you know who I am, as I've been contributing to The Rebel for a while now. If not, I'm a student and a commentator from Vancouver. You may be familiar with my Twitter account, work on the Rebel media, or my affinity for hedgehogs. So far, my contributions to the Rebel have largely been about feminism, social justice, and free speech issues. This show is going to be a little different. It's a debate format show discussing all sorts of cultural and political issues. Today's episode, I've invited Adam Conover to join me on the program. Adam Conover is an American comedian and actor who is well known for being the host of a television show called Adam Ruins Everything. He's also known for being a contributor to College Humor. Back in December, an excerpt from his television show was posted to the internet. This segment, called Why People Think Video Games Are Just for Boys, garnered a massive amount of attention and controversy. I'm paraphrasing, but his argument in the video is essentially that the reason there are less women in gaming and in the games industry is because of sexism in marketing. I produced a short rebuttal video for The Rebel, arguing that the sex differences Conover pointed out in his video were natural and were not the product of sexist marketing. Links to both videos will be in the description, and feel free to make up your mind when you watch those. But this is such a wide-ranging topic that Adam and I both thought it would be productive to have a discussion on female participation in video games and on gender differences in general. Adam Conover joins me now from LA for a face-to-face discussion. Hi, Adam.
Hey,
how's it
Lauren.
going?
Good to be here.
All right, so before we get into the serious stuff, I want to ask you about probably the most important topic we're going to talk about today. Your thoughts on Jeb Bush and the presidential election. I've been creeping your Twitter a little bit, and you've been bullying a bit towards Jeb.
I've been bullying Jeb Bush. Well, I was teasing him a little bit. I mean, Jeb Bush, from a comedian's perspective, has sort of become like a tragic comic character. You know, like I honestly, after he quit the race, I felt bad for him because he genuinely seems like a serious, like substantial guy who was, you know, like a serious governor and a real candidate. You know, but he was beaten in like the most superficial, like humiliating way possible. It's like really kind of a bummer. But you know, there is like some comedy in it, you know, in that he's a little bit like a sad man who, you know, the tweet I made was that he brought dip to the party, but nobody wanted dip, and so he just sort of put it down next to him and hoped someone would take a bite, you know.
He brought guac to the party, Adam.
He brought what to the party?
He brought guac. Have you not seen Jeb Bush's guac bowl? No.
Yeah, the guac bowl is really funny. Yeah, we were talking at work about like, ooh, you can still get some Jeb merchandise. You know, might get a tank top or a guac bowl or something like that. You
so
know,
was he your candidate?
I love the political campaign. It's so much fun.
Was he your candidate, or is it someone else you're supporting?
Look, in general, I'm like a moderate on most issues. Like I'm a very like, you know, so I like if I were voting in the Republican primary, I guess I'd vote for Kasich. If I were voting in the Democratic primary, I live in California, so the primaries aren't going to get to me. So it's like a sporting event that I watch. You know, California votes so late, we don't get to have an opinion. So
Kasich, come on, Adam. All right.
I know, but he's at least trying to be like a normal dude. You know what I mean? I'm surprised Rand Paul didn't get more traction because I really like having the the libertarian perspective is a really interesting little like sort of right turn to have in the Republican Party.
Very important
and
to have
I
there.
like it when it's prominent. I was a little bit bummed that he didn't get more traction.
Mm-hmm. A little bummed for Kasich karate hands too. He's not doing so hot. So Adam, can you tell me a bit about yourself, or just tell the viewers how you ended up with your show, Adam Ruins Everything, and could you just describe it a little for us?
Sure. Well, I mean, how we ended up with the show is pretty simple. We did it as a web series on College Humor. The very first one was a video called Why Engagement Rings Are a Scam. And it's about how, the tradition of the engagement ring, which we think of as being the sort of like timeless symbol of love that's been around forever, and that's what you do, actually was invented in the 30s by the De Beers Diamond Cartel. This is straight up a matter of like historical fact. They just, put it in magazines and movies and waged a campaign to create this occasion where you would get someone someone a ring, where a man would have to pay 2 months of his salary to buy a woman a ring. I had read that years ago, and I thought that was like shocking and startling. And my job was to make funny web videos, and I was like, let me make one about that. And so I sort of told that historical story in a very visual sketch comedy format. That did really well. We made some more. We pitched it around LA. True TV was interested, and we did 12 episodes last year. We're doing another 14 this year that'll be coming out in the fall. And the show in general is just, it's like it's an informational comedy show. It dispels common misconceptions or cultural ideas and tells you the broader history behind them in this sort of visual sketch comedy format. I don't make any claims to be anything other than a comedian. We do have a research staff that does our research and fact checks all our topics, and we cite our sources in the top of the screen so that people can check our work and tell us, we thought you were wrong about this or that. But yeah, that's the show.
So can you tell me, let's go back to where this all started. Can you tell us a little bit about the 7th episode you did and the reaction you received after you posted that episode? That was kind of on gender differences, and I believe you did a bit about summer school.
Yes, yeah. So that whole episode, the video that was online is just a segment. That whole episode was me talking to a kid about various like summer related activities. That was sort of our loose theme. We talked about how summer break was actually invented just because it was too hot in the summertime and rich kids wanted to go to the Hamptons, so they would just shut the schools down. And it's not the agrarian calendar. That's an old myth. And it's like really bad for lower income kids now because they have nowhere to go in the summer months because their parents are working. Let's see. Oh, I'm blanking out. We do so many segments. I forget what the second one was. The second one's about copyright extension. How Disney and other media companies have like pushed for extended copyrights that allow them to hold onto the copyright to characters like Mickey Mouse and things longer. But that means that works don't fall into the public domain, which is bad for society as a whole because public domain's good. And then Act 3 was about video games. And how the broad cultural idea that video games are a boy thing, which is certainly an idea I grew up with, was largely sort of this accident of history that in the 80s, basically the narrative is, before the 80s, like video games were the sort of Wild West period where lots of people were making games for everybody. There were like Infocom games that were for adults. There were Sierra was making games that were very female focused. As you pointed out in your video, Pac-Man was created to appeal to women, but after the big video game crash in the 80s, the market contracted. A lot less companies started making video games, and the most successful company was Nintendo, which was making video games explicitly as toys. And we talk about it in the toy aisle, which was very gender separated. Here's the boy toys, here's the girl toys, right? Nintendo marketed the NES as a boy toy, and at the time that was like really the only video game system that was that the NES is what sort of this new Big Bang period for video games. Like video games sort of started again with the NES, and as a result of that, we just sort of ended up on a trajectory where video games for a couple decades were marketed towards boys, and that's where that idea came from. We only talk about it in 6 minutes or so, so we have to make a lot of generalizations. But that's the in the research that we did, that was the sort of narrative history that we found.
Now, I did a video responding to yours, and I'm sure you watched it.
Yeah, I watched it.
And I made it some of the points. For example, you said that they just randomly picked the boys aisle. Nintendo picked them over the girls, just like rolling a dice. And I kind of said, no, they did some market research to which gender was more interested in it. And there's actually natural differences between the genders that make boys more interested in these types of games over girls being more interested in dolls and Barbies. Did I change your mind at all after you watched my video? Did you kind of question anything you had said in yours?
I mean, I think it led to this conversation, which is, a critical one, which is good. And I wanted to talk to you, and I asked if we could do this because I thought that, we got a number of critical responses. I thought yours was the best one, and I was like, I want to engage with this and talk about it. I think first of all, the fact that Nintendo made that decision about should we market to boys or girls based on market research, that's true. They did, like at the time, they did surveys and things, and they found that more people were playing their games, right? I don't think that indicates that that was the trajectory they were already on, and then that was the trajectory they like doubled down on, you know what I mean, in their marketing. But that wasn't the history of video games up until that moment. Before that, as we talked about earlier in the video games were like, Nintendo also, found that children were playing their games, right? That it was a children-focused thing. But before the 80s, video games were much more of an adult pursuit. You had arcades were mostly, were bars a lot of the time. You had PC games, which were a very adult industry because, mostly adults were the ones buying hobbyist computers. So it was like really a contraction of the market to the one specific segment that Nintendo served.
Okay, so what I would consider one of the more questionable parts of your video is where you suggest that half of gamers are women. So it's because they play phone games and guys mostly play console games. So I think it would be important and helpful for us to define what we both think is a gamer, just for context for this conversation.
Sure. Well, in the video, we're not talking about gamers as a group, that describes themselves with that label. I think when people say gamer, they usually mean someone who plays console games, right? I'm talking about the broader medium of simply controlling a video display using a device to play a game-like thing that a designer has created, right? That's what I'm interested in, because I'm interested in video games as a general medium and art form.
You kind of portray it in the video, though, like, oh, half of women are gamers, or half of gamers are women, rather.
Games.
Yeah, half of women play games. Yeah. But you have to admit, there is a difference between games like Dota, where people are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to play it, versus someone who goes and plays Candy Crush on their washroom break while working at the ball.
I mean, I would agree there's a difference between those games. What I would say is that what that shows is that the mainstream video game market, right, the people who've been making video games very seriously for the last 20 years and have developed that market have been focusing so much on the male audience that the games that appeal more to women haven't been able to mature as much, right? So there are plenty of examples of, for instance, we could draw a distinction between, say, the Kim Kardashian game for the iPhone, right? Which I would say, it's not a very serious game, it's not a very good game. And Animal Crossing, which I think is a serious, good version. That's like an awesome version of the same game. You know what I mean? But there's a lot less of those awesome, serious games of the type that women like to play because the market hasn't been in the habit of marketing to women as much. That would be what I would say.
Now, I think so there's a point that I think we can agree on, that women and men's interests are significantly different in what kind of games they do like to play. Women tend to go more to Animal Crossing, guys tend to go more to Call of Duty.
I totally agree, yeah.
Perfect. So I think what the real question is here is, would you think that we are having a nature versus nurture argument? Is it that the games, that the markets are responding to a natural inclination for guys to buy games, or are they changing what women like through the market?
Well, first of all, our show is, largely one of our main sort of meta topics is the power of marketing, that marketing and, political marketing or any group pushing one idea for a long time is able to affect people's behavior, right? If you disagree with that, fine, that's a separate conversation. But that's sort of one of the theses of the show. It worked when De Beers did it and got, men to buy engagement rings.
Well, that's a question I want to ask, actually. Do you think if we gave newborn girls gaming consoles, would they grow up to play video games rather than Barbies?
Well, here's the thing is, I don't know if you've looked at a baby lately. They're all holding iPads. And so I think we actually are giving girls and boys, video game consoles from a very young age. I would guess, I don't know if anyone's done any research on it. I had this thought last night, but I didn't have time to check. If you did research on if there's a difference between, how much baby boys and baby girls are engaging with iPads and playing the sort of preschool games that babies play, is there a differential? I think it would probably be a pretty low differential. And I think that now that sort of, that is one of the new modalities of video game console, I think 20 years from now, when those kids grow up, the sort of male-female dichotomy we sort of see in the interactive media space is going to just disappear to a large extent for that reason. Because again, my point is not that again, the point is that the fact that we associate serious, like console, let's just keep it to console games. The fact that we associate console gaming with men is because of this accident of marketing that started with Nintendo 20 years ago. It's not because of an innate quality. Now, would you say, is it innate that, men like gun games and women like, Animal Crossing style games? I don't really care. The video wasn't about that. I'm interested. We could have a discussion about it maybe.
Well,
but,
it does seem to suggest that gender
you know,
is more of a social construct kind of thing that can be affected so easily by the markets, when there are a handful of studies by Gad Saad, Simon Baron-Cohen that show that these interests that kids have in different toys, trucks versus Barbies, games versus drawing and coloring and playing house, start before socialization. How would you feel about those studies?
I think, as in all things, nature versus nurture, I think it's honestly a little bit of both. I certainly don't think there are no differences between men and women, but I think that many of, I think you can't really overestimate how much of the world around us, how much of our society is a sort of temporary cultural creation, and I think those two things interact in really interesting ways. So, if we're talking about, again, if we're talking about the types of games that men and women like to play, it sort of holds water to me. Yeah, they probably like to play different games, but I don't believe that women don't like to control a video display using a controller anymore. I don't think they like that less than men do. That doesn't seem very plausible to me. And my argument would be that,
they do.
right now, I just think I just think the video game marketplace is, underserving women to a certain extent for that reason, because there isn't as much going on there.
Okay, we're going to go to talking about markets right after this short break, and we will get off this topic of social construct as a gender. So please stay tuned, and I will be back with Adam Conover on the topic of gender, marketing, and sexism.
I love Alberta. I've lived here my whole life and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of our free market, pro-business, low-tax, do-it-yourself attitude. And now, I'm watching my province get destroyed. We've all had hints of the NDP's radical views in the past, but no one actually thought they'd ever run this province. Not even them. And now they are. And the worst is yet to come. I give my sad forecast for Alberta in my new ebook, The Destroyers, Rachel Notley and the NDP's War on Alberta. Go to thedestroyers.ca to sign up for your free copy today.
Want to have dinner with Faith Goldie? Grab a drink with Brian Lilly? Talk politics with Ezra? You can do it all on the Rebel Cruise. This November, join us for great debates, gourmet meals, and gorgeous scenery as we sail from Fort Lauderdale around beautiful Caribbean islands. It's an intimate week where you can really get to know your favorite Rebel personalities and meet other Rebel lovers too. Space is limited, so visit therebelcruise.ca to sign up now.
Thank you for staying tuned and welcome back. So switching gears here, Adam, your show focuses a lot on the impact of marketing. In many of your other episodes, you explain how the market manipulates people to increase their own profit. Why would the gaming industry act differently? Why wouldn't they try to increase its profit and number of consumers?
Well, I think, first of all, unfortunately, the conclusion of our episode was cut out of the video because we had network regulations preventing us from uploading more than 7 minutes of any episode. Talking, by the way, about why would a market reduce its own profits, I don't know why, Turner would not allow us to put up a whole video. I think that's a good example of them getting in their own way. I think that's something that companies do sometimes. the conclusion of our video is that companies are starting to realize this now. We sort of make fun of Nintendo a little bit. We say, oh, they focused on boys so much, what a mistake they made. And then in the conclusion of the episode, we talk about how, well, once they realized that and they did their market research again and found out that more women were playing their games, they hired a female developer to make Animal Crossing, and that was a huge, huge, huge hit for them, right? And also that we talk about how indie games are a space where more people are making different types of games. And we don't talk about it in the episode, but I would say that if you look at phone games and tablet games and mobile games, that's a space in which developers are willing to take more risks and get out of old habits because they don't have as many preconceived notions about what video games are supposed to be like.
So there are a lot of people that are approaching this video, especially people like Feminist Frequency with Anita Sarkeesian, that are approaching it saying that it is an inherent sexism and misogyny in the games market that is causing this. Would you say that is the cause? Is this inherent sexism and misogyny? Or would you be more on the side that it's just how things ended up randomly? It's just...
Look, we don't use the term sexism in the video. I certainly, think that sexism exists in the world. I think probably the game industry has, its fair share of it, like anywhere else. That's not really, an axe that we were looking to grind there. I think that, to me, it's a matter of the video game industry got started on a trajectory, continued on it, and then in the console game space, those developers, those video game makers haven't done as good a job as they might have had of pulling their heads out of their asses and realizing that the market is bigger than they think, and other game makers, such as mobile game makers, such as Nintendo now, such as indie developers, are starting to realize that and are starting to make money doing that. And I think that as that happens, you'll see the console game developers, the AAA developers start to do the same thing. I don't think that, I think the free market, often works the way that it's supposed to, but I think it's also, full of people who are, flawed and fallible, just like the rest of us. They make mistakes. And so I think that, it's like New Coke wasn't, the free market doing its work, right? And so I think that, Sony, Xbox, the companies that make games for those platforms, they're limiting their market a little bit, They've certainly had great success hyper-focusing on one market, but I think the market is broader than they probably think.
Well, even if they were to expand their markets.
Interactive entertainment, sorry, go ahead.
No. Even if they were to expand their markets, women are known to, the women who do play video games a lot and consider themselves gamers spend significantly less on games. So I think all of this data really makes them stay on this market. And I worked at a game store for 2 years, and they do market to women. They have girls on most of the posters. They have lots of games with strong female protagonists, and those don't seem to draw women in. It seems to be a very, very specific kind of game. The Sims games, the Animal Crossing games, all of the house-type games that that market has been dominated by Sims. They can come out with a new Sims game every year, and it'll sell amazingly, and it's hard to emulate such a similar game.
And you made that point in your video, and I think it was a really good one. That I think that, a strong female main character, look, as, you can make Lara Croft as strong a female character as you want. Who knows if that'll draw more women in, right? But I think the point that you made is that what really brings them in are games like Animal Crossing and The Sims, right? My point would be, if you go to GameStop, right, if we agree that men like, shooting games, right? That's a very specific kind of game too, And when you go to GameStop, there's a wall full of the specific shooting type of game, and there's only a couple boxes of the Animal Crossing Sim style game, right?
Well, it's because not very many people buy it.
My argument would be that
Not very many people buy it. It has much lower sale rates than Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty. And it is marketed to women, as you said, games like Animal Crossing, but they don't get nearly the amount of sales as Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto. So you have to stock more.
Those are different platforms to an extent. I mean, The Sims, I think, was one of the best-selling series of all time, wasn't it? I think we also talked on Twitter. I mentioned Myst, which was one of the biggest-selling games ever, and sold to a very broad audience, right? I think that look. People are creatures of habit, right? So when those things are on sale in GameStop, the video game industry isn't in the habit of marketing to women, and women aren't in the habit of going to GameStop, right? But those are things that slowly change over time, and I think it's in everybody's best interest that they do. Because
why is it in everybody's best interest? Why does it matter? Well, if people like the gender roles they're playing now, why change it?
Sure. Nobody has to change anything that they don't want to. To me, as someone who loves video games and cares about video games, I think that the art form is like kind of impoverished and suffers when it's stuck with a very specific type of game. Like I don't particularly like Call of Duty type games. I like, the last two games I really loved were like The Witness and Firewatch, right? Which I think are like two very non-gender specific games or audience specific games.
That's too funny. I'm a big Call of Duty player.
What'd you say?
I play a lot of Call of Duty.
That's great.
There we go. Destroying gender roles every day.
Yeah, exactly. So my point is, I want there to be more variety. I want 1,000 flowers to boom, to bloom. Did I say
Well, you don't approach this as aggressively as a lot of people. That's why when I initially saw your video, something kind of clicked, and I was like, oh, this is more of this feminist propaganda saying women are always oppressed in the gaming industry, right? Have you heard of this whole Gamergate controversy that's been going on around gaming?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course I heard of it. It was, it was all over the internet. I sort of kept way far away from it because it looked like a big, it just looked like a big radiation zone that you don't want to walk into. Like my Geiger counter went off, But yes, we got a lot of people saying, oh, this is anti-Gamergate, or this is, a lot of feminism, or et cetera. And look, we are not trying to wade into the middle of that. In our writers' room, we talk about what are the big cultural ideas that people don't really understand the history of, right? In our research, This is one that we found. Me and the writer who wrote the episode, who we worked on it together, we're both big fans of video games. We found this story. We're like, wow, this is really interesting. Yeah, if you look at it, the idea that video games are for boys really started with Nintendo. Before that, it really wasn't the case. We made a video pointing that out, right? And we got a lot of responses that were misunderstanding our argument, or were arguing against things that we didn't even say. Like, it was something that people, feel
Well, there's a stigma around the conversation. And it's kind of a thing where it's like no one seems to care when there's a discrepancy of men in a market or discrepancy of men in a certain workforce, but they care a lot when it's women, that you need more women in business roles, but not more men in nursing roles. You need more women in gaming, but not more men doing makeup artistry, right? It's a very interesting dynamic going on right now, and so much focus on women and almost none on men, and I think that's why people are so defensive to these kind of videos. Question, would you consider yourself a feminist?
It's an interesting question. I honestly, it's such a fraught topic that I try not to wade into it. The joke I used to make is like, well, I don't call myself a feminist because then I'd have to have a 2-hour-long conversation about what it means to be a feminist.
Exactly.
It's a little bit, it's a little bit much. When I see, I follow stuff that feminists write on the internet. I like a lot of it. Some of it I disagree with. I don't want to get too much in the middle of it. I've watched Anita Sarkeesian's videos. I've watched a lot of them and gone like, oh man, that's a really good point. That is a really weird pattern. Yeah, that is kind of a bummer. And then I watch other ones and I go, I like this game. I'm not that bothered by it. Like I think, I disagreed with her about Bayonetta 2. I think I love Bayonetta.
Yeah. You seem very.
And so did my girlfriend, and so did a lot of women I know. I think that's fine. You
must have been surprised at the outrage. You seem very balanced on this issue.
I like to be balanced in general, and I like to, my whole goal is to take the temperature down and think about things like, slowly and carefully, right? Which is weird because I'm on cable television and I talk about 3 issues in 21 minutes. So it's a little bit of a contradiction, but
now,
I like to be able to have a conversation.
We do have to finish up here, unfortunately.
Sure.
So your show, Adam Ruins Everything, is airing its second season in August, is it?
Actually, we don't know the date yet. It's sometime in the fall.
Okay, sometime in the fall. And where else can people find your content? So sometime in the fall, you've got your new show going, and then you've also got your Twitter.
Yeah, at Adam Conover. I stream video games sometimes at Twitch TV/Adam Conover. I'm trying to get a little bit better at that. Bought this headset off Amazon to do it. I perform every Thursday at the UCB Sunset in LA. You can see me do stand up there, and we might be doing an Adam Ruins Everything live tour in the fall. So
that's awesome.
Check that out if they're interested and they're not too mad at me for ruining video games for them.
All right. Well, thank you for not ruining my show, Adam. And
thank you so much for having me, Lauren.
Yes, definitely. Please stay tuned till after the break to hear my closing statements.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to therebel.media/themegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
When I was taking women's studies a few months ago, one of our assignments was to write down everything that we thought was wrong with gender-specific Halloween costumes. We were told to write down what we found sexist with those costumes, and we weren't given any room to argue or disagree. They were loaded questions, and it honestly felt like I was just reciting lines from a textbook and nothing more. I was forced to repeat over and over again that these costumes were sexist. The unquestioned assumption was that gendered Halloween costumes must be a cause of gender differences rather than a product of them. When you're told a lie often enough, you're bound to believe it eventually. And based on the data I've looked at, it is a lie. And generally, this is what Adam's show tackles. In the past, he's debunked the ideas that diamonds have real value, that lie detectors work, and that taking vitamins is good for your health. Adam may not be right all the time, and he may not touch on politics often or handle more sensitive topics, but we need more people like him who have a skeptical attitude towards topics. And we certainly need more people who are willing to have a discussion with people who disagree with them. I hope to continue to bring on more guests who are willing to have their ideas challenged. You can go and follow my content on Twitter @Lauren_Southern, or check out my writing and videos at therebel.media. Be sure to watch the next episode of Standoff, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.